Hi everyone, this is Nikki Rowland and today I have a layout for Bramble Fox to share. I'm using some goodies from the February Fox box, so the two light bulbs that say happy and days. I'm also using the white frame that says favourite in English spelling, which I'm delighted about. I decided to, in my quest to use pattern paper on my layouts this year, I'm determined to use as much of this star pattern paper as I possibly can. I was away on a retreat, so I didn't actually have my silhouette machine with me, so cutting out stars by eye was tricky, but I did manage to track down a half a template. So I used that, and I have drawn around it twice and cut it out and have got the perfect star, so all good. But I actually want 3 of them, so at the moment I haven't decided I want 3, and I'll figure out how to do it later, but I spend quite a bit of time faffing around now trying to work out how my layout will actually look. So I have several photographs as possibilities that I could use for this layout, and unfortunately the smaller one doesn't fit in the frame, and the bigger one obviously doesn't fit in the frame either. However, the frame fits nicely over a section of people, and then the other 2 people, their heads stick up over the top of the frame, so I'd like to do that if I possibly can. Here I am trying to work out trying to make another star. Now I couldn't fit a second sized star on this sheet of paper, so it needed to be smaller. So what I've done is I did manage to fit another one of these stars on that paper, just with one of the tips cut off, and now what I'm doing is I'm simply trimming around it with some scissors to make it a little bit smaller. So it really has been done by eye. I really hate doing this stuff. I prefer precision of my silhouette machine. But as I did not have that to hand, I had to figure this out with old school, so with a pencil, a ruler and some scissors. So now I have 2 stars. One is slightly smaller than the other, and at this point I can't decide if I want to use the plaid pattern that's on the back or just have the stars. So I'd say I have spent quite a lot of time faffing around working out how this layout's going to fit together. So I'm pleased to say you didn't have to watch me do all that faffing around. Here I am with the 3 stars arranged as I want them, and also outlined in black pen. So I've literally just done that by hand, no ruler, and I've drawn lines around the edges. Now stars are really awkward shapes, they don't fit together that nicely, so the best way I could cluster them was to overlap the bottom 2, and my photo will sit over that overlap, and then also to have one of the points of the largest star off the page, and I'll just trim that off later. The 3rd star I did by drawing round the smallest star, because obviously I didn't have much paper left at this point. I drew around the smaller star using white, onto just a white piece of paper, and then I cut it out, and then I trimmed it down with my scissors, and then I drew around the little star onto my scraps of paper that I had left. So that's how I managed to get the star in place. So now all that's done, I'm moving on to getting my photo in place and my frame. So I'm just going to stick the frame over the top of the photo with glossy accents, and I really need to make sure that this does not move, otherwise I'll end up with smears of glue all over the faces of the people in my photo, so that really isn't a good idea. So I'm just going to have to be really super duper careful not to put anything on it, knock it, put my sleeve on it. That's what I normally do. Okay, so now that everything's kind of in place, I know where my light bulbs are going, I know where my photo's going, I can now start with the fun part and do some embellishing. So you may have noticed that I've gone back to Christmas. Sorry about that. This is not technically a Christmas photo. It's been taken on the 6th of January and has nothing to do with Christmas whatsoever, other than the fact that it documents the final day of our holiday in Florida, for which we go every Christmas. So it's deserving of Christmas papers, but it's not strictly speaking anything to do with Christmas. It's to say it's the last day of our holiday in the sun. So I wanted to kind of do a subtle Christmas layout. So when you look at this layout, the finished article, it doesn't look overly Christmassy, but I have used Christmas flowers. There's a Christmas tree on it. I've got the star paper, which is a bit Christmassy, although not overly so, and everything else there's nothing overly Christmas on here. It's just a nod to Christmas, so a subtle Christmas layout. There's a few kind of red flowers which are kind of poinsettias, but definitely can get away with it as a non-Christmas layout. But as I say, I wanted my layouts to kind of coordinate for all of the photos that I've scrapped for this holiday, and I've used a lot of these papers in this kit, so that is where I thought I would go with this layout. Okay, so I'm just I'm putting together a bow and getting that onto the layout, or working out whereabouts it's going to go. I've torn a big strip of black and white paper for the side of my layout. I say my quest for the 2020 is to use larger pieces of pattern paper on my layouts, so rather than have an all white background with a small border, I'm getting some pattern in there somehow. It doesn't have to be a full 12 by 12 background, because that generally doesn't work for me, and I was putting too much pressure on myself to try and do that and then hating everything I was creating, so I stopped doing that, went back to white, and then actually this works much better for me. It means I can get the patterns on there without using full sheets or without just reverting back to a white background. So this is my challenge to myself for 2020, get more pattern paper on my backgrounds. Say the three big stars do the job really well, and the black and white stripe or crosshatch on the right hand side adds a pop of drama to the layout and is more pattern paper, so win-win. Okay, so the cluster over on the right hand side consists of a few flowers coming out from underneath the torn edge, and I've also added a Christmas tree there as well. It's not, again, overly Christmassy. It's a tree, and it has green stripes on it, but it's not overly Christmassy. It doesn't have baubles or ornaments on it or anything, so I would say that that's okay. And I've added to that cluster so a couple of flowers, and the blue bow goes there as well. So I felt that the layout needed something at the bottom right of the photo, so I've gone for a chipboard circular frame. It's kind of like a doodled, scribbled frame, and I really liked it, and it gave a good contrast in shape on the layout. I've got 3 stars, and then adding the circle just added an extra area of interest. So I've added that, and then I add a little flower and some other ephemera as well to that section too. I'm going to create my other cluster up in the top right on the star. I've got most of it in place already at this point, so I'm just kind of building on those 3 areas with all of the embellishments that I had left over from the November hip kit. So going back to the light bulbs for a minute, they're really super cute. I love the colour of them, the turquoise, and I have backed those on white card, and the reason I did that was because initially I thought that my light bulbs would sit over the top of the stars, and I didn't want the background to be showing through the holes in the light bulbs. So I backed them with white card because that meant that I could then move them around and place them anywhere I needed to on the layout without having to worry about patterns showing through. So I tend to do that with a lot of my perspectives. On this occasion, I didn't need to do it because actually it just sits on the white background. They both just sit on the white background, so all good. But if I had have wanted to put them on the stars, then that would have worked really well with the backing. So I'm currently just trying to tie some gold thread around the top of my light bulbs. Now this was quite tricky because I'd backed them with white card, so I couldn't tie the thread through the holes, but I did manage to pierce through the background on some, and on one, and on the other one I didn't have anywhere to put the thread anyway, so I just wrapped it around the top. It's got grooves in it. That's the Days one. It has grooves, so I just wrapped the thread around the top and secured it. And then my threads, because I wanted my light bulbs to look like they were hanging down, that's why I've tied the thread around them, so that I can then tie them around the top of the layout so they look like they're hanging. They're actually totally stuck in place, so they won't move at all, but I wanted to get the effect of hanging light bulbs, because light bulbs just don't float around in midair on their own without being attached to something. So you know, I just felt that they had to have a little bit of context and be hanging. So I'm bringing in the gold thread to other parts of the layout as well. So I've added some twiddles to all 3 of my clusters, my embellishment clusters that I've done, yeah, I'm just literally tying those round with around my fingers, and then tucking them under my embellishments, and securing them with a small amount of tape. So this is that tricky light bulb that was giving me some difficulty. So I just managed to just about pierce through the white card background. I had to be careful because it was still a little bit wet from sticking it with glossy accents. So I just had to be a bit careful, and I pierced it through, and I just tied the thread around it a few times, and secured it on the back. So yeah. And now they are stuck in place, that I can now secure my thread, the thread where, so to look like they're hanging down. So I wanted the thread to go underneath the star, but the star was already stuck, so I had to kind of manipulate that through without ruining my star. And this side wasn't working either. The right side wasn't working either, because it was well and truly stuck, and I had the embellishment cluster in the way as well. And then if I kind of hooked it round, it was at a funny angle. So I just about managed, and then I've left the thread looking fairly loose anyway. So rather than a tight taut line of thread, it's quite loose. So I'm happy with how it looks, and I've secured it on the back with some tape, and I have the gold thread twiddle on the point of that star, just where the thread goes up and through it, so it all ties in well. So I'm just trimming off the left hand side of the layout, that point, and I'm pretty much done with the layout now. I'm nearly finished. So just my light bulbs weren't behaving themselves and sticking down properly, so I just put my tape dispenser on top of them for a little while to get them to stick a bit flatter, and then I'm just going to handwrite in my journaling as well, and that's me done. So thank you so much for joining me today. I have used do check out the February Fox box. There's lots of awesome things in it. Thanks for joining me. That was Niki Rowland for Bramble Fox.